Welcome to the College Football Show. It's your boy, George Wrighster. Thank you for joining me. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tell a friend about it. Make sure that you share, hit the like button, notification bell, everything in between, because we are growing so much on this channel, and it is thanks to you guys. This week in college football was absolutely amazing. You had what I believe are two of the best four teams in the country play in Washington and Oregon. We got to talk about that. So much stuff going on in the Big Ten. Got my games of the week. Updated the Heisman race. Man, there are so many people that are spelling doom and gloom on college football. You had Lindsey Graham. Oh, Utah players are getting trucks. College football is dying. It's out of control. How? What I'm watching on the field is incredible. We are seeing more parity than we've ever seen in college football, at least in recent memory. And we're seeing big time players step up. We're finding new superstars of the game. The Heisman winners sometimes are having trouble. And you are finding people who are cementing themselves as the future. I love it. And defense is back. So are big time games. And we're actually going to see more of that as the conference has changed. I know that it sucks that the old rivalries are dying. You don't know your way to the new stadium. You got to figure out your new travel plans. They're inconvenient. But this is the way of the world that we live in. So we can either adapt or we can die. And I'm choosing to adapt because I love college football with all my heart. And if you're watching this, I know that you love college football with all your heart too. So thanks for joining me. And you know where we got to start, bruh. This week's AP poll was bound to be a mess after the great week of college football. But I don't fault the voters when there are hard decisions to be made. My issue is when you have obvious errors by individual voters like last week, when over 10% of the voters had Alabama ahead of Texas, and calling this stuff out clearly works. Last week, I named the 7 AP voters that put Alabama ahead of Texas, despite the Longhorns having a win in Tuscaloosa. And guess how many of those voters repeated that error this week? 0. And since Alabama got another close win this week, this one over Arkansas, and they haven't been punished at all in the polls for looking like some down south mid against inferior teams, Texas must have done something pretty damn special to change the minds of those 7 men. No, they did. They were chilling at home on the couch, which makes you think we are clearly having an impact because of you guys. Let's talk about what the AP poll got right this week, though. I had said that if Washington beat Oregon or vice versa, that I wasn't sure if the voters would do what they did for Oklahoma last week and jump them over undefeated teams, and I was wrong. Washington jumped both Oklahoma and Penn State and even got 2 first-place votes in the process. To the voters' credit, they also didn't punish Oregon, who only fell 1 spot for that close loss because they look like one of the 4 best teams. It also makes me think that they're paying attention what's going on out west or on this channel. Almost so. And I know that Utah people are going to be upset, but they know the truth in their Ute hearts, because if they were paying attention, I'm not sure we'd be seeing Utah in the top 15. The Utes might be 5-1, but they're 114th in points per game, 85th in yards per rush, and 122nd in yards per play. And you might be saying, George, but Cam Rising and Brent Keithy are out. You don't think I know that? But you can't be ranking teams on what might be. You have to rank them according to what is right now. And right now, Utah is probably the 24th best team in the country on the strength of their defense alone. And it's a neat stat that the Utes got 252 yards and 3 TDs out of a converted safety and a converted quarterback on Saturday against Cal. Not for Cal, though. But as I was saying, it's neat that Utah is finding ways to win while their best players get healthy, but it doesn't mean that they can handle keeping up with a functional offense. And I'm afraid voters are going to find out just how wrong they were to drop USC down past Utah this week when the Utes visit the Coliseum. And last up, shout out to undefeated Air Force, America, for cracking the top 25. Can the Falcons go undefeated though? All depends on how long quarterback Zach Larrier is out after injuring his knee against Wyoming. And if they do go undefeated, don't expect them to be anywhere near close to being included in the college football playoff rankings. But it is one of the many reasons I wish the 12-team playoff was happening this year instead of 2024, because we're setting up for a possible situation where Oregon and Washington square off in the Pac-12 championship and win, not if Oregon gets revenge. I'm not sure we'll see both teams in the playoff. The same thing goes for Florida State and North Carolina if they both run the table to meet in the ACC championship. And heaven forbid we're talking about a 11-1 Iowa in the Big Ten championship sneaking a win over Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State. You might have 4 better teams outside the college football playoff than you have in it, especially if the annual agenda to get 2 SEC teams in the Final Four succeeds. Enough of all that, though. It's time for what you all been waiting for. My college football top 10, as it should be, ranked by the three most important criteria: dominance, quality wins, and schedule play. So with that, my number one team in the nation right now, the Washington Huskies. Number two, the Michigan Wolverines. Schedule ain't that great, but their dominance has been insane. Number three, the Georgia Bulldogs. Number four, Florida State. Number five, Oklahoma. Number six, my Oregon Ducks. Number seven, University of North Carolina. Number eight, the Ohio State University. Number nine, Penn State. And number 10, Texas. Can't wait for your comments. We need to talk about the Pac-12, not the Conference of Champions, but the Conference of Cannibals that's back for one last ride. There's drama on the field of play and in the field of law. This week alone, Stanford went from being down 29-0 at halftime in Boulder versus Colorado and likely going winless in the conference to a 46-43 double overtime win and making Colorado likely to miss a bowl game. Arizona went to Pullman and beat the Cougs 44-6, even though these same two teams played in Tucson last year, and Washington State won easily. Meanwhile, Washington State is Oregon State's only loss, Oregon State is Utah's only loss, and Oregon State beat UCLA, who beat Washington State. Are you confused yet? Well, welcome to my world for the last 12 years. But the real reason we need to talk about the Pac-12 is the possibility that in its last year, this wonderfully strange conference might just deserve two playoff teams. Anybody who watched Oregon at Washington was treated to what will likely be the best game of 2023. And it's a real possibility that the Ducks and the Huskies run the table the rest of the way. And what happens if Washington ends up beating USC, Utah, and Oregon State to head into the conference championship at 12-0, where they lose to an Oregon team that has wins over those same three ranked teams? How are you going to justify keeping either team out of the playoff? Let's say the Pac-12 does get two teams into the college football playoff. How about that money? The payout for getting a team to the CFP semifinals is $6 million, and that money goes directly to the conference. That's right. You have a scenario where it's possible that the NCAA hands a $12 million check. So now maybe it's a little easier to understand why the University of Washington filed a motion to join the lawsuit by Washington State and Oregon State against the Pac-12 and Commissioner George Kliavkoff. Now, if you aren't up to speed on Pac-12 politics, I don't blame you. It's exhausting. The gist of it is Oregon State and Washington State were left homeless by the other 10 teams jumping ship. There's a bunch of money left over from deep NCAA tournament runs, plus a hefty $72 million overpayment to Comcast as a leftover from the Larry Scott era. The Beavs and the Cougs don't think that anybody that's not sticking around should have any say-so on how that money is distributed or how the bills get paid. But if Washington is granted inclusion in this lawsuit, they can then file a second motion to get it thrown out completely. And since the Huskies are currently this conference's best shot at getting another big check from the NCAA, you can see why they might want to have a voting interest in how that money gets distributed. That's the Pac-12, people. Let's talk about the predictability of the Big Ten Conference. All 9 Big Ten champions in the current divisional format, and 8 of those participants in the college football playoff have come out of the East Division. All but 2 of those conference champions have been split between Ohio State and Michigan. One of those was Michigan State in 2015, and the other was Penn State in 2016. But Michigan State did something that Penn State didn't do and still hasn't done to this day. They beat Ohio State and Michigan in the same year. Penn State, though, has stayed relevant under James Franklin, but never relevant enough. So here we are this week, Penn State 6-0, Ohio State 6-0, and they're going to face off in Columbus. But it feels like we already know the outcome because James Franklin is 1-8 against Ohio State, not just on the field, but in the recruiting rankings over the last 9 seasons as well. And in the upcoming 2024 recruiting class, Ohio State isn't mopping the floor with just Penn State. They're killing everybody. They have the #1 class in the country. 19 of their 24 verbal commits had offers from Penn State, but chose Columbus instead. That's got to sting a little bit. And it feels like James Franklin is trapped as one of the Big Ten's best coaches on the 3rd best team. And the only way out of that trap is for his top 5 offense and top 10 defense to take the field in the shoe and finish what Notre Dame couldn't. Good luck with that, though. The Big Ten's most complete team, though, is Michigan, with Ohio State's offensive inconsistency. And you have to wonder how much longer college football is going to keep Jim Harbaugh's interest. He's won 22 of his last 23 conference games, and the only thing that he has left to accomplish is ending a season with a win. Believe it or not, Harbaugh hasn't just lost the last 2 college football playoff games, he's lost 6 bowl games in a row. The only thing that he has left to do is what he seemed to struggle with the NFL level, and that's finishing the job. So before he heads to Chicago or whatever NFL job throws $15 million a year his way, is it possible that this Michigan team be the first to accomplish making Jim Harbaugh a champion? If the Wolverines can survive back-to-back road games at Maryland and Penn State, it will all come down to the game. It always comes down to Michigan hosting Ohio State in the Big House, and if they win that game, they'll likely face a rock fight with the only other defense in the country putting up similar numbers to Michigan, the Iowa Hawkeyes. But Iowa would have to score 25 points to win that game, so we know that that ain't happening. And if Michigan survives that slate, they'll deserve to go in the college football playoff as the favorite. And if they win it all with a competent quarterback in J.J. McCarthy and the country's best defense in a year where the college football playoff could include 4 undefeated teams, there won't be anything left for Harbaugh to accomplish anyway. He might walk off into the sunset having coached what could be the team of the decade. I'll let Bama, Georgia, LSU, and Ohio State argue about that in the comments. I've cut my Heisman watch list from 10 down to 5, and let's get into how my top 5 shakes out. First up, and the leader of the pack, Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. And believe it or not, Oregon's defense actually played extremely well against Penix, especially compared to everybody else, because Oregon was the first team to hold him under 73% completions, and he still carved us up for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Do you realize how insane it is to do what Michael Penix does? He works exclusively from the pocket. He's only taken 4 sacks and only thrown 3 interceptions. Defenses know exactly where he's going to be in the pocket, and they know his targets, and all his stuff is on film. Arizona tried to keep everything in front of him. He tore him up. Oregon teed off on him, hurt him, still carved him up. It's ridiculous. Number two, North Carolina quarterback Drake May. You might not think that Drake May has the statistics so far to justify being on this list, but a large part of Heisman is narrative driven. May came into the season as one of the favorites to win it. The Tar Heels are undefeated, and May just equaled the amount of touchdown passes that Miami had given up all season in one game. Yes, North Carolina's rushing attack has leveled up, but one of the reasons for that is that defenses have to respect the pass. Plus, the fun thing about having May on here is that it sets up nicely for an end-of-season showdown with my third finalist, number 3, Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis is also undefeated, and the Seminoles won't play North Carolina unless it's in the ACC championship. Can you imagine that hype? Now, forget the hype. Can you imagine the hate from SEC fans in response to the hype surrounding the conference that they refuse to respect? Maybe LSU and South Carolina should have beat those two when they had the chance. But what makes Jordan Travis one of my finalists? Well, he won on the road at Clemson, and he also outplayed my 4th finalist head-to-head, which brings me to number 4, LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is putting up video game numbers. And yes, I know he lost head-to-head versus Jordan Travis, but he's been pretty damn lights out. He's trusting his receivers in single coverage for the first time in his career, and all while protecting the ball as well as anybody in college football. Plus, he's a legitimate threat to go the distance every single time that he runs the ball, which he keeps doing despite getting teed off by defenses 1 time or more per game. And 5th on this list, and maybe it'll be controversial after last week, but it is USC quarterback Caleb Williams. One bad game doesn't change the fact that he's the best player in college football. Now, this is conditional. Both he and USC have to be perfect for the rest of the way for him to repeat as a Heisman winner, which to this point actually seems impossible. The one downside for Caleb is that away game against Notre Dame was his best chance to leave an impression aside from the Oregon game. You can't win any awards playing on Pac-12 Network at 7:30 at night. But if any player in the country can, it's him. But I'm just saying. To be clear, though, the players on this list could still change because there are guys I'm leaving off this go-around that still have a chance to make an impression. If Michigan's J.J. McCarthy is the difference between Michigan winning and losing against Ohio State and Penn State, he'll earn some consideration. Oklahoma's schedule outside of the Texas win is super light this year. But if Dylan Gabriel maintains his 72% completions, 9.6 yards per pass attempt, and 8-to-1 touchdown to interception interception ratio, we'll have to consider him as well. A couple of guys also that deserve to be on my list have already had head-to-head losses with guys on those lists, which is tough to overcome. And here's to hoping that Bo Nix and Missouri's Brady Cooks get opportunities to redeem themselves. Let's get into some of this week's top college football game. What happens when a very stoppable object goes against an extremely movable force? Well, we're about to find out when Utah's offense visits USC's defense. The Utes have struggled in Los Angeles as long as they've been a university, but the minute that they started coming to the City of Angels and winning games, USC and UCLA packed it up and headed to the Big Ten. So who knows when or if this game will be played again. And this is going to be a huge bounce back opportunity for Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, and this USC offense, which had a disastrous showing out in South Bend where they got beat by 4 touchdowns. There are still questions about Alex Grinch and his defense. And on the Utah side, their defense is tremendous. It's their offense that's been a problem, which has been in rock fights in every single game of the season. So the question is, can this defense give their offense enough room and enough leverage to be able to win, scoring 18, 21 points? Another game I got my eye on is number 17 Tennessee visiting number 11 Alabama. The Crimson Tide have not looked good this year, but they're winning close games and they have home field advantage. But something doesn't sit right with Alabama being almost a 10-point favorite when they haven't even won their last 2 games by a combined 10 points. This is Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton's last chance to make a statement before he becomes the modern Uncle Rico, a guy that will just be remembered for being able to throw the ball a quarter mile. And both of these teams need this win if they want to have any chance of making the SEC championship. And Alabama, with where they are in the AP poll, still has a chance, an outside chance, at the college football playoff if they can win out and then go beat Georgia in the SEC championship. I've already talked about number 7 Penn State at number 3 Ohio State. I don't think that Penn State can win in a shootout. James Franklin 1-8 record against Ohio State makes me think that they're not likely to win at all. But if they do get a win, it'll be because their quarterback Drew Aller makes use of his clutch tight end Tyler Warren in big moments. Now on the Buckeye side, this might be Marvin Harrison Jr.'s breakout game, which is scary to say about a guy that has 400-yard receiving games already this year. This game means so much to Ohio State because they want to stay in the college football playoff conversation, with the Big Ten still having divisions and only either Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan getting a chance to go to play Iowa in the conference championship game. And also this means so much to Penn State because they haven't been able to do it and they need this. James Franklin needs this game. This is his opportunity and we'll see if they can do it. Last up, my game of the week is out in the ACC, where Florida State is going all in to host over 30 D1 level recruits in a ranked battle against Duke. This includes Miami 4-star commit Artavius Jones. That's the thing I love about college football. The results on the field are about much more than the results on the field. They're about the future. They're about recruiting. But Duke is not going to just lay down in this game. They can't roll their helmets out and win. They're 1 score away from being undefeated. And their running back, Jordan Waters, will be ready to carry this team on his back if their star quarterback, Riley Leonard, isn't ready to return from his ankle injury. And Duke's Cinderella season is not over. And Florida State, just like all the rest of the teams that are ranked inside the top 10 right now, that pressure is going to start to mount. You're going to start to feel that, oh my God, we're getting close to the finish line. We're getting close to the finish line. And everybody's going to be giving you their best shot. And that pressure mounts on the team. And the teams that don't crack are the teams that end up in the college football playoff. And then from there, you have to don't crack again and bring your A game to win a national championship.